Thank you so much. Okay. So it's a great pleasure to be here and share my research. As mentioned today, I'm gonna show actually this is part of my PhD study, which is called a critical gonal eye. And I use it to be my conceptual framework for my study, which is about international students' experiences in China's English media instruction programs. Okay, so this is in fact a work in progress. So I do welcome your feedback and comments after my presentation. Thank you. Okay, so next slide. So to begin, as we know, higher education worldwide is hosting an increasing number of international students in pursuit of internationalization. And according to the recent statistics, there were over 6.3 million international students in 2020, which is up from 2 million in 2000. And this number is expected to reach 8 million by 2025. And perhaps more significant than the rising number is the computation from the newer study destination like China, Singapore, and Malaysia, which are challenging traditional study destinations like the US, UK, Canada, Australia. And today in this presentation, I will use China as an example to illustrate and as like a kind of a context for today's presentation. And as we know, those newer study destinations, once known as for sending students abroad, are not receiving large numbers due to their rapid internationalization effort. And if we just look closely to statistics of China, we can see that China achieved a significant milestone in 2000 when those coming to study in China outnumber those leaving China to study abroad. And in 2015, China became
I'm very sorry. We're still seeing your title slide. Can you move on to the next?
Oh my, what's wrong?
We just need
I'm so sorry.
Because you're talking about numbers, but we're not I think you need to come out of your presentation
and
go into
Is that okay now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So this is the second slide.
Yeah, we're seeing global context now. Yeah.
Okay. So this is about China. And here are some numbers that you can take a look. And I just want to say, like, in recent years, especially before the COVID-19, China had a large number of international students. So to emphasize why we need to look at the international student research in China. And also I want to emphasize that even though that we have large numbers enrolled, that doesn't mean that we have we fully understand their experiences. As I will illustrate in the remainder of my presentation, that there are some limitations in our existing knowledge, and especially about the conceptual framings used. And also I will introduce a new conceptual framework, which we already mentioned is called the critical gonal eye, to broaden our conceptual frameworks approaches to international student research in China and beyond, because I feel like there are some like limited similarities, like as non-English countries, that we need to something that we need to pay attention. Okay, so here are some limitations in framings of existing research. So first of all, I found lots of research are atheoretical. That means they lack theoretical engagement. This is problematic because these frameworks are core to research, guiding the entire research process from the question we ask to how we analyze and present finding. So without them, such research remain underdeveloped. And also many studies frame international students from deficit perspective, focusing on what they lack. And these deficit framings and the narratives are pernicious because they tend to portray international students as inherently problematic, thus limiting the opportunity to understand them in a more complex and or multidimensional way. As a result, our understanding is still narrow or lopsided. And third, few studies adopt critical perspectives to address underlying issues like power, inequality, or dominance. This omission is troubling because these issues are crucial for understanding international students in this uneven, unequal global higher education context. So without recognizing the structural forces impacting international students, existing research may perpetuate stereotypes and deficit perspectives. So in response to these issues, I propose a new conceptual framework called critical colonial eye, which is mainly informed by the critical and the post-colonial theories and perspectives, as well as my own experience as both a Chinese international student in the US and then in Singapore, and also a teacher of international students in China. So here are four guiding principles for this conceptual framework. So as you can see from the slide, I will not read because later I will illustrate each one of these. So, but overall, I use the term I rather than a framework for its symbolic value because I would like to emphasize the fact that different eyes lead to different views, which for researchers could mean different problems perceived, questions asked, methodologies employed, funding obtained, and conclusions we made. And this eye is also used as a tool to illustrate how the four principles are connected with each other as organic framework. As we can see from the slide, international students are placed at the center of the eye, embedded within the local, national, global context, just like the eye's pupil, iris, and the sclera, overlapping and inseparable. So in the remainder of my presentation, I will briefly elaborate on these four principles and discuss how they can help us advance the international student research in a more equitable way. Okay, so first, researching with international students as epistemic equals. Epistemic equality is highlighted in the first principle because international students, especially those from less privileged backgrounds, have been historically silenced and marginalized due to the colonial history and legacy. Even today, they are often unfair accused of having less global relevance, which is a term broadly defined as being or becoming like Western Anglophone countries. As such, they are still viewed as sometimes viewed as non-people, inferior, primitive, and barbarians. So against this background, this critical colonial eye encourage researchers to embrace different ways of knowing, different sources of knowledge, and make visible the co-existing paradigms of thought that have been silenced and disavowed. And also in practice, I would like to say that this conceptual framework requires a student-centered approach to international student research, which means it seeks to understand international students' perspectives, experiences, and the needs by researching with them rather than about them or on them. It is argued that the later terms implies a sense of arrogance as researchers, and which is like unequal research participant relation, and a false assumption that international students are less knowledgeable and have less to offer. And in that way, we may reproduce or produce stereotypes, deficit perspectives, and pervasive othering. So the second one, situating international students in the global colonial context. This principle draws on the concept of colonial, which is a term coined by Dr. Margenson, and it points to the existence and interconnectedness of global, national, and local dimensions, as well as the forces on higher education development. As you can see, the term GLONACO was coined by placing together the three terms, global, national, and local. And according to Dr. Madison, higher education is globally, nationally, and locally implicated. So no single dimension should be neglected or always determined. Although this concept has been commonly used in the higher education studies over the last 2 decades, few have incorporated into like analytical framework in international student research, which is kind of like a subfield of higher education internationalization studies. However, in view of the increasing interconnected world, people think globally, act locally, and feel national. As the eye has shown, international students are situated within the relational environment, thus navigating in and being shaped by the local, national, and the global context simultaneously. So this principle is also proposed on my observation and also reviewing the literature that international students experience are heavily discussed at the local or the national level. For example, documenting their experiences in the program or in a university, or comparing students' home culture and their host culture. Well, this is understandable because, as we can see from the eye, the international students are situated in the local context, which is the most proximate context to them. But the critical global eye critiques the idea that research focusing on a solo context can produce a well-rounded or multidimensional understanding of international students and their experiences. So by this, we call for situating international students in the multiple contexts and also to analyze from the different levels to produce a more well-rounded and nuanced understanding of them. Okay, so the third principle, recognizing uneven structural power relations and its impact on international students. While power can be seen everywhere, the critical global eye is informed by the post-colonial scholarship that invites scholars to engage with the tensions and complexity of structural power relations inherent in the global and the national context, which I will illustrate. So in the global context, we know that despite the fact that the colonies have achieved independence worldwide, coloniality continues to legitimize, naturalize, or universalize Western modernity throughout the world. So I refer to the dominant global imaginary, this concept. And as we know, this concept has its origins in the establishment of modern colonial world system, and it is characterized by the colonial illusion of Western superiority. And such global imaginary naturalized Western European domination and the colonial social relations, and projects a local perspective as a universal blueprint for imagined global design. So in a simple way, that means it promotes like a narrow thinking that Western knowledge is superior than other knowledges and cultures. And also in the national context, I refer to the concept of semi-peripheral post-coloniality, which is posted by by Ginelli. This is to complement the global imaginary as another important structure of power influence international students. I use this term because as we can see from the eye, students are situated in within the local, national, and the global. So at the in the national level, which is in the middle, for example, the international students who are studying in China, they are not only influenced by the global forces, they are also influenced by the national forces. For example, the China's soft power. We know that China is promoting like its soft power by building the world-class universities and also the One Belt, One Road economic initiatives. So this principle reminds us that international students are influenced by multiple structural forces, not only the bigger one, the global one, but also the national ones. By when they are compare or when they are referring to their country and the host country or the larger context, like international students in other Western traditional countries. So this principle is kind of to remind us of the multiple structural forces impacting students. And the last one is to consider international students' agency. I feel it's very helpful following the previous presentation, because they talk a lot about the agency. So I will not illustrate a lot on this concept, but in brief, this is to that I want to emphasize that we need to balance when we are researching with international students, we need to balance the principle 3 and the principle 4, which are the structural external structural forces and internal students agency, so that we can produce a more nuanced and multidimensional understanding of them. Okay, so the significance of the study. So practically speaking, this new conceptual framework is to enable a critical and multidimensional analysis of not only the international students' experiences in China, but also the origins of forces that shape their experiences. And additionally, this paper responds to the scholarly calls for more critical framings to engage with power, dominance, and hegemony in the process of higher education internationalization, and the greater criticality towards deficit framings often associated with international students. And also, in the end, I hope this new conceptual framework can help broaden over conceptual approaches to international student research in non-Anglophone countries like China, and promote a more equitable and inclusive higher education environment for all students in the future. Okay, so thank you so much for your attention. I look forward to your questions.
That's great, Nan, and thank you so much. Really interesting presentation. We had a question in the chat, which is about the definition of an international student. How is an international student defined in China?
Yeah, a very good question. So for this research only, that I define it as students who are pursuing higher education outside their country of citizenship. But I do recognize that, especially in recent years, that this term is kind of is tend to be viewed problematic because many reasons. For example, the digitalization. Students are having online courses. They are studying like a Western curriculum while staying in their home country. And also, it's kind of a narrow way to say someone is international only because is too complicated. Everyone, it's not easily defined. So I do recognize this term is we need to recognize is not a perfect word to group these students, but just for the purpose of my presentation and this research and this paper, I use this kind of brief, simple definition. Yeah.
Volko, did that answer your question? Did you want to follow up or?
Thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting, and I'm thinking that science is a very huge context. And I was thinking that there must be different categories of international student, and thinking policies, statistics, support services, institutional priorities, funding, and many other things. That is the reason why I asked this question. And you told that you need to problematize this, and I would say that I recommend you to do that because there are always in one standard category different diversities as well, and where exactly are the boundaries when a student is international and when it is not. Also, I'm from Finland, and also here I can say that it's not so easy to always say that when a student is international and when not. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the suggestion. Yeah.